In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to underglaze on ceramics and the difference between working on wet clay as opposed to working on dry clay. You'll need a palette. I'm working with a standard bathroom tile, but you can use a plate or anything you've got lying around. I've got some brushes in various sizes. I have a jar of water for my paintbrushes, and I have some ceramic underglaze in standard primary colors plus black and white, and you can mix these together to get your perfect shades. For those unfamiliar with underglaze, underglaze is essentially a matte ceramic paint, which when coated with a layer of glaze will be nice and shiny after firing. So let's get started. Right, so I've got equal parts of my blue and white. Just take a little bit of water and I'm going to mix those two together. And firstly, I'm going to work on my wet clays. And you see there, I've mixed it together. It's nice and smooth, but it's still a nice creamy full thickness. This is what we need to work on wet clay. The clay and the paint are a similar moisture content, and they can dry out together. So I can just go and paint away, load up my brush, and apply the underglaze in one thin, smooth layer, working in any ridges in the paint, but trying not to go over areas too much. When I'm working on wet clay, I'm going to do 2 layers of the underglaze for it to be nice and opaque and flat and strong. And what I'll need to do is wait in between those 2 layers, or dry with a hairdryer or a heat gun, and wait until the underglaze is touch dry, and then I can do my second layer to make sure it's evenly covered. So in this case, I'm going to set this one aside while I paint my dry piece. Okay, so the rules get changed up a little bit when it comes to painting or underglazing on dry or bisque-fired ceramics. Bisque-fired ceramic refers to when the piece has been fired once in a kiln and has had all the moisture drawn out of it. What I do in this case is I need to water down my paint significantly so the paint can soak into the surface of the ceramic and create a nice base for subsequent layers to soak into as well. And now, again, I'm going to load up my brush nicely, and then I'm going to apply my underglaze in a cross-hatch motion, so I'm covering the direction of my layers, and then I'm going to let that really runny underglaze soak in. Once it's touch dry, you can go with your second and third layer. These 3 layers are necessary again to achieve opacity. If you want a nice watercolory or some variation effects in your underglaze, you can just water it down and waft it on, as I like to say, and you can get beautiful variations, splotchiness, and because you've watered it down nicely, it'll soak in and create a beautiful effect. And you can leave it just like that if you want to. With my opaque layers though, I'm just going to add a little bit more of my thick underglaze into my skim or almond milk solution until I get pouring cream consistency, which is still a little bit runnier than my full thickness of my nice smooth thick underglaze. Cross hatching again, and this will take a little bit longer to soak in. And let that dry, and then you can do your third layer, and then you can add any colors and designs that you'd like to over the top, again with 3 layers to achieve opacity. But you don't need to go back to almond milk. You go 3 layers cream. So, in summary, first layer milk, second, third layer cream, milk, cream, cream, and then every other layer after that, cream, cream, cream. So I'm going to add my third layer. And let that dry. And now let's go back to our wet clay. Still a little bit tacky, but it's not too bad. So we're going back to our full thickness underglaze, loading it up again. Oh, I missed a spot. Hello. No matter. And just again, a nice, consistent layer, working in those ridges. And voila! So there we go. We've got both our base layers down, and now we can add a design over the top. Okay, so now we can add our design to the piece. And I have a pin tool, a knife, and a pencil. So we're going to start with our dry piece, our bisque-fired piece. And the fun thing about working on dry or bisque-fired clay is when you are adding your design, you can use a pencil to draw it in as much as you like, and it will burn out in the firing. This is your magic pencil. You could sit here and colour in the whole thing. The pencil will burn out. Bliss. So I'm going to draw a little daisy in here. That as a guide to paint with my underglaze. With my wet clay, what I have the option of doing, because the surface is still quite soft, is I could carve my daisy into the surface with a pin tool or a knife, depending on your preference, or the thickness that you'd like with your lines. And that can be quite cute and textural. Coming back to our bisque-fired clay, we go back to our cream, cream, cream consistency. And I'm going to start with my white underglaze. Dilute it just a little bit. So now we've got our 2 plates with our 2 flowers. I just realized I've done 2 entirely different daisies. That's okay, that happens. So now I'm going to add some details, including some texture for the wet clay plate and some black line little detaily bits for the dry one. Alright, now black underglaze is the exception to the rule when it comes to layering. Black underglaze only needs 1 layer, and you only need to water it down enough so it can glide nicely and doesn't drag across your piece. With wet clay, you'll find that you aren't able to get as much detail in your black underglaze as with your paint in general as with your dry. And hey presto! So we have our 2 finished dishes, and as you can see, they're quite different. Both beautiful, both different, depends on what your style is or what you feel like doing on a particular day, how much time you've got, the weather. Choose your own adventure.